Europe is doing it, and so is the US right now. So the US in huge amounts of money, and Europe
is doing it. Vicky, the United States is doing it. The European Union is very good at saying that it does things which it never does.
Now, although there has been a recent fall, central banks are widely seen to have failed to control inflation, at times running up 6 times target. The banks blamed the Ukraine war, but critics point to the rapid rise in inflation before the war broke out. And among other factors, they often find quantitative easing at fault. Moreover, some claim there's a more fundamental problem, that there is no overall coherent economic theory in the first place. Bank models failed to predict the 2008 crash or the more recent cost of living crisis. In 2015, the European Central Bank claimed that neither monetarist nor Keynesian economics provided solutions to the financial crisis, leading some to question if any economic theory had the answers.
Let's stop thinking of this as a failure of the central banks to avert inflation. It is a failure of the central bank to influence the price level and the rate of change of price level, both on the way down. So there was a failure to arrest inflation and a failure to arrest deflation. Okay, so it's not just that this quantitative easing and money printing gave rise to inflation. It failed at the same time to give rise to controlling deflation. And the reason for that is because when you have a crisis like 2008, which effectively knocks out a very substantial amount of investment in productive activity, the question is, how do you directly replenish this investment? Quantitative easing failed to do this. It failed to do it spectacularly. It refloated the banking sector. The banking sector. It did wonders for the financiers. It did nothing for the productive side of the economy, for the supply side of the economy. And then when the war in Ukraine conspired with the pandemics, lockdowns, and so on, to create a major diminution of supply temporarily, that combined with the fact that some of the money that was printed for the first time in 13 years went to the little people, through furlough schemes and so on, that because of the constrained supply gave rise to inflation. Now, in very practical terms, my criticism is that when inflation started going up, I disagree with Vicky here, and I will be surprisingly closer to John, given our politics, surprisingly. My recommendation immediately in 2021, well before the war in Ukraine, was put interest rates up to 3.5% today. Do not go through this slow motion of increasing interest rates. At the same time, do not make the mistake of thinking that first you have to unwind quantitative easing and then increase interest rates. Increase interest rates immediately, because, Vicky, the reason why I was saying that was because, yes, maybe commodity prices were edging downwards, or the inflation rate for commodity prices, but asset prices, real estate was booming. There was a rally, and everything rallying in the stock exchange. It was absolutely crazy. It was important to tighten interest rates, push them up to 3.5% immediately, but at the same time, make sure that all the lost productive capacity was somehow replenished, especially green energy. It was as if I could see that Putin was coming, right? Mm-hmm. And pluck the money tree so as directly to fund, find some scheme, either through a public investment bank or through some scheme using the existing mechanism of the central bank.
Well, Europe is doing it, and so is the US right now. So the US in huge amounts of money, and Europe
is doing it. Vicky, the United States is doing it. The European Union is very good at saying that it does things which it never does.
Let me move on, because it's a good moment to do this, I think, to the next part, which is to talk about, we've talked about various theories, we've talked about central banks, we've talked about ways of stopping this lurching. But do we need a radical new economic theory? Or should we conclude that the economy is not predictable?
Well, what I tell my students at the university is that they have a duty to study every single economic theory ever come out, understand their flaws, intimately, and then when it comes to actually passing judgment, to forget all of them, and just retain all the sharpness of the mind that this study of eclectic study of different theories. What I am utterly against, I actually think that they're a clear and present danger for our social economies.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.